Hello and welcome everyone. This is EagleNews. I'm David Oria in Washington. It's Saturday, February 3rd, 2024, here in the nation's capital. The week's recap begins with the global economy, which might be finally making a smooth landing. There are, however, still bumps ahead. That's the word from the International Monetary Fund's chief economist, Pierre-Olivier Gourinchas. Let's get the details from Jeff Senegad.
The IMF's chief economist Pierre-Olivier Gourinchas paints a cautiously optimistic picture of the global economy. He says it's on a soft landing path with declining inflation and steady growth. However, he warns that turbulence may still lie ahead.
The global economy has been surprisingly resilient, with growth now projected at 3.1% in 2024 and 3.2% in 2025. For 2024, the slight upgrade from our October projections is largely due to resilience in the United States and several large emerging markets and developing economies, coupled with more fiscal support in China. However, this forecast remains well below the 2019 average growth of 3.8%. Inflation is falling faster than anticipated in most regions, thanks to the easing of supply-side pressures and restrictive monetary policy. The global headline inflation rate is expected to decrease to 5.8% in 2024 and 4.4% in 2025, with the forecast for 2025 revised down. The likelihood of a hard economic landing has decreased due to faster disinflation and steady growth.
Mr. Gourinchas highlights that while the outlook has improved, the pace of growth remains slow and risks persist. He mentions potential new commodity price spikes, continued weaknesses in China's property sector, and abrupt fiscal tightening as some of the key concerns.
Risks to global growth are now broadly balanced. On the upside, faster disinflation could ease financial conditions. Looser fiscal policy than expected could imply a temporarily higher growth, though at the risk of a more costly adjustment later on. Stronger reform momentum could boost productivity growth with positive spillovers. However, downside risks remain, including potential new commodity price spikes from geopolitical shocks, persistent underlying inflation, continued weaknesses in China's property sector, or a disruptive turn to tax hikes and spending cuts.
The IMF report also urges policymakers to focus on medium-term growth beyond simply managing inflation. Mr. Gourinchas emphasizes the need for structural reform to boost productivity, reduce debt, and improve living standards.
The near-term challenge for policymakers is to successfully manage the final descent of inflation to target, calibrating monetary policy in response to underlying inflation dynamics. There is also a growing need, now that inflation is declining and economies are better able to absorb effects of fiscal tightening, for a renewed focus on fiscal consolidation to manage debt and build resilience for future shocks. Targeted and sequenced structural reforms would boost productivity, help with reducing debt, and improve income prospects. Multilateral coordination is essential for debt resolution and mitigating the effects of climate change.
So while the global economy is not out of the woods yet, the IMF report offers a glimmer of hope. However, it's clear that policymakers need to tread carefully and stay vigilant to potential risk in order to secure a sustainable and inclusive recovery. In Washington, D.C., Jeff Senegad, EagleNews. We live in extraordinary times.
A recent report by the Ontario Medical Association, or OMA, says that the province is in need of hundreds of doctors to attend to its people. OMA says Ontario faces a serious shortage of physicians. Yolanda Spears tells us more.
Often it is said that health is wealth. If that's the case, then Ontario may not be considered wealthy at all. Reports from the Ontario Medical Association, or OMA, show that Toronto and the province in general are missing hundreds of doctors. There isn't enough family doctors to meet the demands of the community. 2.3 million people are without a family doctor, according to OMA. More than 2,500 family physicians are needed across Ontario. This need is expected to double in the next 2 years. OMA also reports that there's a huge number of family doctors considering leaving their medical practice due to underfunding and rising inflation. Family doctors report that almost half of their working time are spent on paperwork, working through a disconnected healthcare system. OMA President Dr. Andrew Park says that their goal is to make sure everyone in the province has access to a family doctor. People are paying a lot of taxes for their healthcare and they deserve a doctor. OMA reports that Toronto tops the list with needing 305 doctors, followed by Ottawa needing 171 doctors. According to a recent survey, 70% of Canadians report being worried that they wouldn't be able to receive good quality medication if they need it. Yolanda Aspiras, Toronto, Ontario, Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg and the chief executives of TikTok, X, Discord, and Snap are grilled by the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee over the dangers that children and teens face on social media platforms. During the hearing, Zuckerberg was asked to apologize to families whose kids fell victim to exploitation on Meta's platforms. Bruce Balmeo has more.
Tech chiefs Mark Zuckerberg of Meta, Linda Yaccarino of X, Shou Zichu of TikTok, Evan Spiegel of Snap, and Jason Citron of Discord were convened by the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee in Washington Wednesday. They testified about the effects of social media in a session titled Big Tech and the Online Child Sexual Exploitation Crisis. Senator Amy Klobuchar, Democrat of Minnesota, compares the action lawmakers took against the dangers posed by faulty planes to inaction when it comes to dangers posed by social media. She says she wants it done.
When a Boeing plane lost a door in mid-flight several weeks ago, nobody questioned the decision to ground a fleet of over 700 planes. So why aren't we taking the same type of decisive action on the danger of these platforms when we know these kids are dying?
Klobuchar says it is time to pass bills to regulate social media that will hold the tech companies accountable.
Because there's been so much talk at these hearings and popcorn throwing and the like, and I just want to get this stuff done. I'm so tired of this. It's been 28 years, since the internet. We haven't passed any of these bills because everyone's double talk. It's time to actually pass them. And the reason they haven't passed is because of the power of your company. So let's be really, really clear about that. So what you say matters. Your words matter.
Senator Lindsey Graham, Republic of South Carolina, says there is not one law that can punish the tech companies. Graham calls for that to stop.
There's no commission to go to that can punish you. There's not one law in the book because you oppose everything we do. And you can't be sued. That has to stop, folks. How do you expect the people in the audience to believe that we're going to help their families if we don't have some system or a combination of systems to hold these people accountable?
Meanwhile, during the hearing, Senator Josh Hawley, Republican of Missouri, accuses Zuckerberg that despite knowing full well that their platform is a disaster for teenagers, he keeps doing what he's doing.
For years, you've been coming in public and testifying under oath that there's absolutely no link. Your product is wonderful. The science is nascent, full speed ahead, while internally, you know full well your product is a disaster for teenagers.
Senator,
and yet you keep right on doing what you're doing. Your job is to be responsible for what your company has done. You've made billions of dollars on the people sitting behind you here. You've done nothing to help them. You've done nothing to compensate them. You've done nothing to put it right. You could do so here today, and you should. You should, Mr. Zuckerberg.
Hawley asked Zuckerberg if he had apologized to the families of victims impacted by child sexual exploitation on his platform. He then invites Zuckerberg to stand up.
Would you like to apologize for what you've done to these good people?
Zuckerberg does before addressing the families. Bruce Balmeo, Eagle News, We live in extraordinary times.
Republican governors rally behind Texas Governor Greg Abbott in the escalating feud with the Biden administration over immigration enforcement. May Fanway Zaragoza has the details.
While Texas officials and the federal government continue to clash over control of the U.S.-Mexico border, several Republican governors have pledged their support to the Lone Star State. In 2023, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection recorded 2.5 million illegal crossings, which included attempts by 169 individuals on the terror watch list. Since President Biden took office, over 10 million illegal immigrants have crossed the border, including more than 1.7 million known getaways. Shelby Park, in the border town of Eagle Pass, Texas, has become a high-traffic location for illegal crossings into the U.S. from Mexico. To discourage illegal border crossings, Governor Abbott and troops from the Texas National Guard seized the park and covered barriers with coils and road razor wire. The Biden administration argued that the wiring makes it difficult and dangerous for federal agents to perform their duties. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that Border Patrol agents were allowed to remove the razor wire. Texas officers, however, continued to replace and install more razor wire in Eagle Pass, which was not prohibited under the Supreme Court's order, and also blocked Border Patrol agents from entering the park. Unless the president explicitly takes federal control, the National Guard in each state takes orders from its governor. The razor wire was funded from Operation Lone Star, a program launched by Governor Abbott, whose purpose, he claims, is to fill dangerous gaps created by the Biden administration's refusal to secure the border. Domingo Garcia, national president of the League of United Latin American Citizens, or LULAC, supported the Supreme Court's decision and condemned the use of razor wire and other deterrents as inhumane. He stated that Texas Governor Abbott's political stunts are costing millions of taxpayers' dollars and accomplishing nothing to solve the humanitarian crisis at the border, not to mention the human tragedy of deaths of innocent women and children. Abbott issued a statement last Wednesday that he will continue to implement new immigration measures, calling it a constitutional right to self-defense, and accused the Biden administration of ignoring the federal statutes that mandate the detention of all illegal immigrants. Other Republican leaders rallied for the Texas governor, including Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who was among the first to announce his support by sending over 1,000 National Guard members to the southern Texas border. DeSantis stated, "Our reinforcement will help Texas to add additional barriers, including razor wire along the border. We don't have a country if we don't have a border." This Sunday, Governor Abbott will be joined by 14 other Republican governors in Eagle Pass to discuss the current border crisis. Stay tuned for further updates. In Houston, Texas, I'm May Fanway Zaragoza, Eagle News. We live in extraordinary time.
Aviation authorities warn Americans to stop pointing lasers at planes. In 2023, pilots reported a record number of laser pointing incidents. Elise Danielle tells us more.
The Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, says that the latest figure of 13,304 laser strikes on airplanes is a 41% increase over the year before. This by far is the highest number since data collection began. FAA warns that this poses a major safety threat to pilots, passengers, and those on the ground. FAA Administrator Michael Whittaker warns that a laser strike can temporarily blind a pilot or cause severe eye injury. He says the FAA takes this threat very seriously.
If you have a laser, please use it responsibly and never point it at an aircraft. We encourage you to report laser strikes to the FAA via our website or to your local law enforcement agency.
Offenders can face FAA fines up to $11,000 per violation or $30,800 for multiple infractions. This in addition to criminal penalties from federal, state, and local law enforcement. Most laser strikes aimed at cockpits happen at night during takeoffs and landings. Authorities attribute the sharp increase to a greater abundance of devices available online at lower price points and higher power capacities, as well as advent of green lasers, which are more easily visible. In all, pilots have reported 313 eye injuries since the FAA began recording data on laser strikes in 2010. Elise Danielle, EagleNews. We live in extraordinary times.
If plans push through, New York City may be the first city in the nation to implement a traffic congestion pricing program in the spring. What does this mean for drivers entering Manhattan? From the Big Apple, here's Joanne Soriano.
In a plan meant to reduce traffic and improve air quality, New York City may be the first in the nation to pass a congestion pricing program to charge motorists a fee to drive into Midtown Manhattan. Tolling cameras and systems have already been installed in parts of Manhattan in anticipation of the plan moving forward. Congestion pricing would impose a $15 fee on vehicles entering Manhattan below 60th Street. Additionally, trucks could pay $24 to $36 depending on size. Taxis would pay $1.25, and rideshare vehicles would pay $2.50. Beyond lessening gridlock and traffic for the most congested areas in the Central Business District, this project will help the Metropolitan Transportation Authority fund capital upgrades for the city's subways, buses, and commuter trains. Even though this tolling plan is meant to improve quality of life for millions of people, not everyone is happy, including small businesses within the congestion zone, which comprises the lower half of Manhattan, including Times Square, the Theater District, and World Trade Center. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy is suing New York over the plan, saying the tolls discriminate against New Jersey drivers. There will be a 60-day public comment period where people can weigh in on the plan and ask questions, which ends on March 11th. If the tolling structure is approved, toll collection could begin as early as May or June of this year. Joanne Soriano, New York, EagleNews. We live in extraordinary times.
Extraordinary stories from ThomasILikness today. From discovering what is believed to be the oldest hand-sewn boat under the Adriatic Sea, to a special hangout place for the young at heart in China. All these and more on Correspondent at Large.
And now news and commentary from around the globe. We talk about transportation today, past, present, future. We'll go back in time with this story, which comes off the coast of Croatia on the floor of the Adriatic Sea. A fisherman alerted archaeologists to this undersea wreckage. It dates back to sometime between the 12th and 10th centuries. This wreckage is believed to be the oldest hand-sewn boat. That's right, hand-sewn. This technique of shipbuilding uses tendons or wood roots or other plant fibers to sew the planks of the boat together. Now, this particular vessel was originally 10 meters long. Only about a third of it remains. A few other similar vessels have been discovered, but this one is believed to be the oldest. These ships didn't use sails, but could be powered by 7 to 9 rowers. For now, it remains underwater, mired in the mud, but while there, it's protected from harmful bacteria that destroy the wood. From what was to what could soon be. Quiet, supersonic flight. Engineers say they've found a way to reduce the loudness of the sonic boom. Now, we've had supersonic flight before. You recall the Concorde. It's now, of course, decommissioned. It flew at twice the speed of sound, but could only do so over the ocean due to the damage that could be created by the sonic boom. NASA and Lockheed Martin are working on a new plane called the X-59. It doesn't go quite as fast as the Concorde, just 1.4 times the speed of sound. But its design will allow it to reach those high speeds while producing a quieter sonic thump. This aircraft is about 30 meters long, 9 meters wide. The plane hasn't left the ground yet. Test flights are planned for sometime this year. And now, in present-day time, the Panama Canal. It's feeling the effects of ElNiño. There's a traffic jam at the entrance to the 80-kilometer route. That's because fewer ships can be accommodated because, well, there's just not enough water. Only 24 ships a day are passing through the canal. That's down from the usual 38 when things are operating normally. About 6% of the world's maritime cargo passes through this canal. But wait, you say, there's plenty of water in the oceans. How can there be a shortage? Well, The canal uses fresh water and it comes from lakes in Panama, and those same lakes provide more than half the water for Panama's 4 million people. And because of the drought, there just isn't enough water to go around. Canal operators are keeping their fingers crossed that things will improve at the end of April, which is the start of the rainy season. And this is an unlikely place to be looking for love: an Ikea store in Shanghai. For more than a decade now, a seniors matchmaking group has been gathering weekly in the store's cafeteria. Every Tuesday, hundreds of elderly lovebirds take over most of the tables in the chain's spacious canteen. They shun the classic Swedish meatballs for their own tea and snacks that they bring from home. Faced with empty nests and changing social structures as China's population ages, they've taken matters into their own hands and turned the store into an unlikely dating site. The atmosphere and noise level is more like a high school cafeteria than an old people's home. No one's quite sure how all of this started more than 10 years ago. There's no organizer. Most say they just heard about the gathering from friends. Store management had tried for years to get rid of the seniors without any success. In one altercation, a security guard asked an old man to be quiet. The man threw his hot coffee at him. Tensions have appeared to have cooled off since then. IKEA says it's now aware of the loneliness of the elderly in its neighborhood and will provide a place where they can feel at home and meet with friends. And I'll be back in 7 days, and in the meantime, I wish you all peace, joy, and happiness in the ensuing week. ThomasILikness, Correspondent at Large, EagleNews. We live in extraordinary times.
For the first time ever, the World Health Organization awards 5 countries for their progress in eliminating industrial-produced trans fatty acids. Rochelle Faria tells us more on health as well.
Denmark, Lithuania, Poland, Saudi Arabia, and Thailand received certificates awarded by the World Health Organization, validating their progress in eliminating industrially produced trans fatty acids, or ITFA. WHO says the 5 countries have each demonstrated they have a best practice policy for ITFA elimination in effect. Trans fatty acids, or TFAs, are semi-solid to solid fats that occur in 2 forms: industrially produced and naturally occurring. TFA intake is associated with increased risk of heart attacks and death from heart disease. TFAs have no known health benefits, and IFTA are often high in sugar, fat, and salt. Some examples are fried foods, cakes, and ready meals. WHO says a total of 53 countries have now best practice policies in effect for tracking IFTA in food. This notably improves the food environment for 3.7 billion people. These policies are expected to save approximately 183,000 lives a year. In Washington, D.C., Rochelle Faria, EagleNews. We live in extraordinary times.
Queensland is mopping up after Cyclone Kirrily hit the province. Although the impact was not as strong as warned and expected, residents say you can never be prepared enough for a disaster. Here's Morgan Goodfellow on Oceania at a Glance.
The Category 3 cyclone records wind speeds of up to 140 kilometers. Emergency reinforcements were called to relieve residents affected by the disaster. North and Northeast Queensland business owners board up their shops. Airlines and bus services are forced to delay flights and schedules. Locals shared with us how they prepared for the cyclone's impact.
First of all, we prepare our own homes to secure all the windows and other things that it could fly when the cyclone is coming. Normally, we buying some water and some canned foods and also some other things that it could power outage, so we charge our flashlights and other kind of emergency lights.
We prepared, we've got 2 big sheds here, loaded everything that could be blown away into the shed, locked the sheds up, pinned the bottom of the doors so they don't get blown in, put the garbage bins in on the other door so if it flows in, it's not going to wreck everything. Just make sure everything's secure.
As residents begin the cleanup, they still await conditions to return to normal as power outages still envelope the region. Morgan Goodfellow, Townsville, Australia, EagleNews. We live in extraordinary times.
On the front steps of the Rose Parade headquarters, newly installed President Ed Morales announces the theme for 2025, Best Day Ever. The big reveal aspires to evoke memories of joyous experiences and significant accomplishments in people. It aims to remind everyone to celebrate and be thankful. In Pasadena, California, Ava Basaliai has a story.
In a highly anticipated moment for parade and flower enthusiasts, the organizers of the annual Rose Parade have officially unveiled the theme for 2025, Best Day Ever.
New Year's is a time for reflection. As we look back at those events that inspired us and look forward to opportunities the new year will bring, we celebrate precious moments and look forward to more. Over the years, as we raised our 2 children, Lainey and Jessie, and tucked them into bed, we look back at those precious times when they said, Mom, Dad, today was the best day ever. The theme for the 2025 Tournament of Roses is Best Day Ever. The best day ever is really a moment. You could really be having not so good a day, and then something happens later in the day and it flips it around, and all of a sudden it can go from not so good to the best day ever. And we just think it's a happy, positive theme and is universal and can really, people of all ages can relate. I mean, I just think everyone's goal should be try to have as many best days ever as you possibly can.
We have had the opportunity to talk to so many people across the country who we see a logo that we're from the Rose Parade, and they want to run over and tell us about the best time that they had when they were little at the Rose Parade, or a bucket list item that they've always wanted to go to the Rose Parade. It's woven into all of us, and it makes the world very small, and that's exciting.
I thought it was a great theme. I often have great days, and to have this being your best day ever, I think it really resonates with the society today. This is my first time down for the unveiling. I've often watched it on television. I'm really excited to be here. The excitement here of having it announced was incredible.
This is unbelievable. This city of 140,000 people, a very small town in consideration, but during New Year's Parade Day, we get over 1 million individuals that will come to the town and line our parade route, that 5.5-mile parade route. It brings tradition, it brings passion, and it brings energy to the city. And this is something that we all look forward to in celebrating America's New Year's celebration. This is an opportunity for all of us to be able to experience in different ways how our life has been the best day ever. And by choosing this theme, I'm so excited and looking forward to everyone sharing their moments and their best day ever.
Preparing for the Rose Parade is a nearly year-long endeavor. So while a theme reveal in January may seem early, for equestrian units, marching bands, and float design teams, tonight's announcement is right on time. Eva Basaliaje, Pasadena, California, EagleNews. We live in extraordinary times.
Before we let you go, here's our photo of the week. This is the National Concert Hall in Taipei. It sits alongside its twin building, the National Theater in the country's cultural center. Built in 1987, the National Chiang Kai-shek Cultural Center is the first national-level cultural venue in Taiwan. Aside from musical, dance, and theater performances, center visitors can also tour the Cultural Gallery and Performing Arts Library for an in-depth look at the world of performing arts in Taipei. Thank you, Ninita Manawis, for this photo. Thank you all for joining us again. If there are stories or topics you want us to share with you, just comment below. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and X at EagleNews Live. I'm David Oria. We live in extraordinary times. Stay happy and healthy, everyone.